If Satan is not chasing after you, then you are not chasing after God. When Satan is chasing after us, and obviously Satan is just one entity, he can't be everywhere at all times. That is only God who is omnipresent. But we know that Lucifer has a legion of demons. He took a third of the angels when he fell and was cast down to the earth. And we know that Satan is the ruler and prince of the air. And we know that the enemy has come to steal, kill, and destroy. But we know that Christ came that we might have life and have it more abundantly. And so that's why it is very important for us to understand that if the enemy is not chasing after us, then we are not chasing after God. Because the enemy desires to steal time that could be dedicated to God's kingdom away, and that it would just be manifested in the ways of the flesh or just would be complacent. He desires to destroy every single soul in which God has made. Satan knows his end, but he desires to bring as many people with him to his end as possible. And we know that Lucifer ultimately wants to kill productivity for God with us. He wants to see people die early, to commit suicide. He wants to kill everything and anything that has to do with God, because we are made in the image of God. And whatever is of God, clearly the enemy hates. And so Lucifer, Satan himself, the legion of demons, they have only one goal and mission, and that is to bring God's people down and to keep people from entering into a relationship with God. And that's why Lucifer, it breathes out lies. He is the father of lies, who speaks out doubt. He makes people super fearful and anxious of this world. He focuses people's eyes on other things. He tempts our desires of the flesh to certain standpoints, to where our will give into those certain temptations. He is working overtime, him and his legion of demons. And that is why it's important that if we don't really feel attacks from the enemy, then we really aren't doing what God is calling us to do. Because we see, for example, the Apostle Paul, he had battles without and fears within. He went through immense adversity and suffering, and some of these were God appointed. Other times they were God permitted. It wasn't exactly God doing them, but it was God allowing these things to happen because God foreknew the end result of what would come out of that. And so if we don't have any struggles or trials or tribulations in our life, then we need to start asking, are we truly chasing after God? Because if we aren't chasing after God, our life is going to be pretty lackadaisical. There's really not going to be any productivity for God. We're not going to be seeking Him. We're not going to be growing in the things of Him. And in that state, we will either become down and depressed because we'll begin to wonder what life is all about. We'll feel like we're just going through routine each and every time. Other times, people are fine with routine. They're fine with doing the same thing day in, day out, and not really diving into the Word, not praying, seeking the face of God. And due to this, Satan has no bother, no need, no necessity to try and bring those people down. Satan is not at all concerned with the complacent Christian. He's not at all worried about the slothful Christian. He is worried about those who are seeking God and loving God with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength. He is most concerned about those people. But those who are complacent about the faith, spiritually dead and lethargic, he has no worries because they're of no concern. I mean, technically, the slothful Christian is supposed to be an enemy of Lucifer, but in some sense, he's sort of an ally because he's not really, Satan has lost trying to damn the soul of that person, but he hasn't lost in stealing productivity and killing time dedicated for God. So Lucifer just simply is unconcerned about that person because that person's not doing anything for God. And that is a dangerous position to be in. To go to the end of our lives, to give an account for our lives and really see nothing, no desire really for God. Maybe we barely come in to heaven, as my papa says, with smoke on our clothes, with the smell of smoke. Some of us will barely make it into heaven because we simply coasted on in this life and we really didn't want to press into the things of God. We didn't want to dive into his word that gives spiritual revelations, that gives new insights, that just helps us throughout this life, encourages us, convicts us, guides us to be more holy. We didn't press in to understand that God is in us who are born again. We have the Holy Spirit living within us who desires to cultivate a relationship with us. We really didn't want to press into the things of God or the things that are of God or God himself. And those people are going to be fairly devastated on that final day. And that's why we need to know that we should be enemies of the enemy. We know that our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and darkness and rulers of the air. And we need to live a life in such a way where Lucifer and his demons are chasing after us. Whereas Leonard Ravenhill said he wanted to strive to be on hell's most wanted list. And so are we desiring to live in such a way as that? Do we desire to be one of those most hated by the enemy? Because if we are most hated by the enemy, we are being most profitable and productive for God. If the enemy is chasing after us, that means we are chasing after God. But if the enemy is not chasing after us, we really aren't chasing after God. We're in a stagnant state that really is not being profitable for God. So may we ask that the Holy Spirit would revive in us a desire for him, that the Holy Spirit would help our lack of discipline, that he would help our lack of desire for God. May we just ask that the Holy Spirit would guide and move us in the direction of God, that he would supernaturally transform us from within, that we may seek God without, that we may desire more of God to rule within us, in order that we may truly live a life that fulfilled the purposes and callings in which God had for us.